one of the things too about O'Hara and Williams and Blackburn and all these poets that I'm kind of attracted to is that they help me, like that they help me realize the importance of specificity and having my ears and eyes open, and like listening really carefully, to try to get that moment down, and exactly as it is to me, at that, and I think that's part of the practice too,
right?
To be able to, because I don't know how much, I don't know how much rendering O'Hara is doing in these pieces, and I don't know how much rendering Williams is doing, but I would like to think that what is actually happening is that through practice, through thousands of poems, that when O'Hara sits down at a cafe, that he has this facility.
What's that? Like Larry Eigner, the poet, used to say, responsibility is the ability to respond. And that as a poet, it's our job to keep practiced, daily, so that when something big does happen, you are there to respond. And
so that's the thing too, is that and for the youth that we write with and everything, that there's this revelation that practice isn't like going to some carol or crawling up to the attic of your house and lighting a candle, and that the practice happens everywhere. It happens everywhere, and that's kind of how you hone your craft. So I was thinking, this Paul Blackburn poem, which I think is actually fairly apt for where we are in the world right now, the Unemployment Bureau, is kind of an illustration of that idea of honing your craft in the moment where you are at the time. So can I read one more? So this is the Unemployment Bureau, and I think it captures kind of what we're talking about a little bit.
Paul Blackburn. Right?
Paul Blackburn, by Paul Blackburn. The Unemployment Bureau. The fly on the floor of the unemployment office in Carlisle Street walks in quick little spurts as though on wheels, going nowhere, circling, tribbling about in a circle. When, lash, I dash my foot out at him, he flies a few inches away and lands, crouched, sluggish, then circles back toward my foot, where it stands in line with other unemployed feet. Poor fly. March is too early in springtime for you to buzz our heads. Black speck on brown tile floor. You are probably also trying to get in line. So that, I think about, the kids that we write with in this kind, and how wonderful it is when they realize that, when I'm on the SEPTA bus and I'm riding to Key Vive, or when I'm on, when I'm sitting in the dentist's office, it's a moment for practice, and a moment for poetry.
Right.
And when I realized that too, that kind of not only did it change the way I thought about poetry and the way that I wrote it, but it changed the way that I saw the world. Mm-hmm. It changed the way I saw the world.
Joanne Geiger, another one of my favorite poets, sort of inheritor of the Williams tradition, I would say, and sort of quasi-contemporary of Frank O'Hara's, outlived him by far. She's still alive. O'Hara died in 1966, but she's a California poet who, again, she has this wonderful conversational tone, attention to the ordinary, everyday details, and each of her poems at the bottom is actually dated, and sometimes even with a time stamp, to sort of really kind of drive home this idea that this is not a story about a moment, but an enactment of a moment. So that, I think that's what Leif and I are trying to get at, is that Poetry doesn't have to be just about, your grandmother's apron told in sort of basically prose chopped up into lines. It can be an enactment,
the moment itself.
Of remembering it itself, an embodiment. One of Geiger's compatriots, Philip Whalen, he described his poetry as, my poetry is a graph of the mind moving. And I think in Geiger you kind of get this sense of a sort of lively, probing intelligence at work on the page, kind of in process, And since it's almost Easter, I thought we could read. She has a cheeky little Easter poem. Being a Buddhist, she's a little cheeky about Easter. A story from Easter, He Has Risen. There is a mouse under the sink. Little mouse turds around in the kitchen drawers. It is raining, storming. The refrigerator has gone to the dump. Donald's back has brought him to bed for several months. He can't move. The war is skidding to an end. Who wants to kill anything? Buy 2 mouse traps and leave them, unset, around in conspicuous places. I think it's gone away. One day, I take the peanut oil from under the sink. The top is gone. Inside the peanut oil is the body of a mouse. Oh, too horrible. Look at this. I put it outside the back door. The top of the bottle is really very narrow. He wiggled in head first. He can't get back out. He's drowned, but preserved. He's in his oil tomb for 2 weeks. On Easter Day, I look at the bottle. He has risen to the top. Donald now walks, buries the mouse next day. April 27th, 1991. So that would be, I guess, the Gulf War, first time around.
First Gulf War.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also that channeling, right? Of like the channeling of everything that's going on in that moment, and that the moment. The moment is what's happening in front of your nose, like, between your 2 feet. But then there's this whole other moment that's happening, and like she's so good at like channeling that. Like Ginsberg is really good at channeling, all everything that's happening in that dynamic like moment. Yeah.
I would contrast that to like when Matthew Shepard was murdered in was it 99, I think, in Wyoming. Left to hang on the wire fence in Wyoming. When I was going to grad school, we decided to create an anthology of poems for Matthew Shepard, and we had a reading. And within, a month, we had poems from, poets all across the country, in an anthology. A lot of them flew to perform, and Donald Hall, another one of our, poet laureates, sent a wonderful letter back saying, I could not possibly write a poem in less than 6 months, and how dare you even ask me? And we were all just kind of taken aback because the caliber of response that we got from, very, esteemed poets was almost immediate. And to me, it really highlighted this contrast between, poetry as this sort of museum piece.
Yeah.
That you kind of fuss away with like a ship in a bottle for years and years, versus poetry as a way of being fully alive in the here and now and the ability to respond. So I feel like a lot of the poets that Leif and I like are sort of that second ilk.
I think of Nikki Giovanni, who says, if I have to work on a poem for too long, it's not a poem. Yeah,
might be an essay.
yeah. Or, I think that she's not necessarily saying,
right,
that it's not something, but there is that. I think what she's trying to get at too is that like immediacy and the energy. Where's the energy? Where's the energy coming from?
Right.
For that piece.
Here's Joanne Geiger being mean to Allen Ginsberg. I like this a lot. Because Joanne Geiger, being one of the only women of the Beat generation, was often left out of sort of accounts of, what went on between all the boys, But she was part of, Ginsberg and Peter Orlovsky's and Gary Snyder's well-documented journey to India, So this is actually called Poison Oak for Allen, Allen being Allen Ginsberg. Here I am, reading about your trip to India again, with Gary Snyder and Peter Orlovsky, period. Who took cover picture of you three with smart Himalayan mountain backdrop? The bear? I'm sorry I blew that, but she's kind of making fun. Like she was there taking all the pictures of the boys, and they got all the press.
We also pulled out Juan Felipe Herrera, or I did, because again, I think you can probably tell that for me, part of what makes poetry interesting is its playfulness. I mean, it's got to be playful, I think. And but who said? Was it Kerouac that said "take it light"? Or somebody said, when you're writing poetry, take it light. And so I think Juan Felipe Herrera does a really good job of taking it light and then also just really nailing it. So this is his poem, It Is Said. If you eat watermelon at night, you'll grow horns. If you listen to your eggs, you'll know who's after you. If you boil spinach with alcohol, you'll clear the house. If you keep dry bones, you'll dream of wild dogs. If you call a peccary, it will remember you. If you wear blue panties in an interview, you'll get a snow job. If you wear red briefs on the first date, you'll get the position. If you throw a chicken bone over your shoulder, he'll call. If you spit into his black olive twice, he'll choke on your name. If you memorize a license plate a day, you won't crash. If you wrap a green tie around your ankle, he'll give you the money. If you see 3 hummingbirds in a row, the world is yours. If you feed a fly for a week, you'll inherit property on Long Island. If you blow into a sock on Saturday, your nose will shrink. If you write 7 words 7 times, you'll find what you lost. If you drink violet water, you'll dream of witches. If you burn his hairs on a stove, he'll love your cooking. If you collect leaves and pennies, you'll get rich quick. If you follow people 5 times, they'll run from you. If you drink yerba azteca, you won't run out of bologna. If you stuff a golf ball into your bridal cake, you'll have a boy. If you say Mexico backwards 100 times, you'll find Montezuma's gold. If you do Zen while eating salami, you'll lose weight fast. If you sprinkle rosewater on your corns, your breath will sweeten. If you paste the Virgin on your dashboard, you'll make it to Tijuana. So I have to say too that I'm a sucker for convention and constraint. Mm-hmm. I know that there's a whole argument about form and honing your craft through form, mm-hmm. and what that can and the negatives of that. But I love form. Mm-hmm. A lot of times I feel like it gives me a freedom to do something. So this list, it's a list mm-hmm. poem and the chant of this. Well, first of all, I just think it's brilliant. But also for me, I like being able to take on these constraints and mm-hmm. and try them in my
Sometimes
in my
the
own work.
Constraint actually opens up a kind of freedom that you would never get if you were just trying to write freely,
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
It's funny too, I think what's coming through too is this just a sense of humor and playfulness, like you were saying. That's not the kind of poem where after you hear it you go, oh
wow. Or you would never hear somebody after hearing that poem go that was deep. That was deep. Wow.
It is deep, though.
It is
deep and not the kind of expected and conventional ways that kind of we hear about so much.
It's not super earnest.
Right, super earnest. Yeah.
Yeah, and the just the juxtapositions are just so great. They're so great.
Yeah. And they work. I wore red underwear in a job interview, and I got the job.
That was this job, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's where you wore the red underwear.
Yeah.
I need to get more red underwear.
Yeah.
Yeah.